2024 haven't had the best start so far, but luckily the Hype 4 is here to save the day. It's pretty great. In terms of overall refinement and how smooth and extended the treble is, the Hype 4 is probably the best I've heard before the Supernova. Like, just look at the graph, it's pretty much a straight line. Lots of air, more than the Hype 2, and a bigger sense of space as well, followed by a good amount of reverb to the cymbals, and the decays feels very nuanced but also not harsh or sharp. Again, very refined and just well controlled in the treble region. It's followed by great resolution as well, not artificially sharp like the T2s, a little bit better than the Hype 2, and slightly less than the Supernovas. Likewise, vocals are similar to the Hype 2, not too forward, but just enough to hear the details without becoming, overbearing or shrill sounding, not too forward. Fairly clean mids as well, leaning on the heavier side this time because of the increased mid bass, but overall there's no masking, no low end bleed, very well separated, extended, open, and just very good vocals. A tier. And aside from the great treble quality, the Hype 4 actually has another selling point, which is in its low end. It's got a very subwoofer-like characteristic, very well controlled like the Hype 2, but just more pronounced this time. It slams harder, it feels a little bit heavier. The reverb from the bass notes are more extended, they're more noticeable. In general, the bass is more audible because there's just more bass, and at the same time the low end doesn't overtake the rest of the sound. It still sounds fairly open and not super forward in the low end like some of the bass head IEMs like the Maestro series. Overall, the Hype 4 is just more engaging than the Hype 2. The audio basically just boosted the bass, boosted the air, and created a more exciting version of his younger brother. But if you already own the Hype 2, then you don't really need to upgrade. The difference is very small, a little more bass and air, a tiny bump in resolution, and value wise the Hype 2 is definitely still better. And if you already had the Hype 2, you should just save up for the Monarch MK3s because that's more of a direct upgrade. However, if you're buying from scratch so you don't own the Hype 2, then this is where it gets a little bit tricky. If you like bass, so your library is mainly hip-hop, rock, R&B, even some EDM and pop, then the extra low end in the Hype 4 will increase the immersion when it comes to stuff like bass guitars, the drums, the male vocals. They just go a lot harder on the Hype 4s. But if you don't want that much bass and you're okay with just a slight Harman bass boost, then yeah, the Hype 2 would be the better pick in that scenario. Vocal wise, the Studio 4 is still the best in that scenario. It's more forward, it's cleaner, a little bit more detail, and overall just less colored, more neutral. It's a little bit sharper because the treble extension isn't as smooth as the Hype 4, but it does sound a little bit sweeter with the female vocals and on tracks like indie, ballads, and stuff like that. So if that's what you're looking for, or if that's what your library is mainly made up of, then yeah, Studio 4 is still the way to go. Compared to the EJ07M, the Hype 4 is just as well textured and rumbly in the sub bass, but it just has more meat and warmer, a lot more mid bass, better for rock and hip hop, as well as having smoother treble extension. However, I do still prefer the vocals and mids on the EJ07M more. They're just cleaner, a little bit more detailed and forward, more immersive like the Studio 4, but with just a slight sub bass boost this time. So depending on your preferences and your library, either the 07M or the Hype 4 will work, and they're both still very great sets. Versus the top, they're both very similar in the low end, but the Hype 4 does have better bass control. It's not as boomy, more tactile, and overall smoother in the upper mids and treble as well. The top is more energetic and a little bit more resolving, I would say. The peaks bring out more dynamic contrast and sharpness in the end notes. It's overall brighter depending on your unit because, again, unit variation, but it is brighter for the most part. And for me, as an all-rounder, the Hype 4 is just smoother, better treble quality, and comes in at $150 less, so I would take the Hype 4. Many people have also been saying the Hype 4 is a mini Mark III, and I would agree. It's basically the same thing, but just a little less resolving, pretty much 90% of the Mark III, and pretty great value wise if you put it that way. But anyhow, hope this video was helpful. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see everyone in the next one.